off-year election, Virginia, a key swing state, a critical Obama state. In '08, the GOP expelled Democratic governor and former Goldman Sachs big shot John Corzine in New Jersey. It repealed a gay marriage law in Maine. It appears likely Republicans will pick up Evan Bayh's Senate seat in Indiana, along with a number of congressional seats next fall. And through it all, the ratings of hard-right, paranoid-style radio and television personalities like Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, and other demagogues of the Fox News variety have been shot. And this lunatic that I hear riding around my car, Mark Levine, I hear him getting on the truck. He can't stop calling. It's not enough for him to call Obama a socialist. He said Obama is a Marxist-Leninist. The vapid Alaskan proto-fascist Sarah Palin retains a stubborn base of support. She has lined up a cadre of high-powered Washington insiders to make a very serious run, people, in 2012. MSNBC talk show hosts Rachel Maddow and Keith Olbermann can portray the American right as a marginal collection of goofy Tea Party kooks whose main rule is to provide laughs for all-knowing liberals. But there is something more serious going on. This shit is for real. How could this, my European correspondents want to know, how could the seemingly discredited and laughable Republican right get so rejuvenated so quickly in the first year of the Obama presidency? Democratic liberals within and beyond the so-called People's Republic of Johnson County might want to stop looking down their noses and sneering and laughing about this stuff and take an honest look at themselves and at the limited nature of the big money, corporate crafted, narrow spectrum political culture, 1.5 party system, and the president in which they've invested. So there is widespread and legitimate anger. What dominant corporate media haughtily dismisses as quote-unquote populist outrage, there is widespread, legitimate, popular anger across the country, and there's absolutely nothing mysterious about where it comes from and what its material base is. Real unemployment is over 17%, even as Wall Street pundits on our corporate telescreens crow about quote-unquote recovery. 1 in 4 U.S. children relies on food stamps to survive. The top 1% of the population owns more than 40% of the wealth, closer to 2/3 of the nation's financial asset, and a probably higher percentage of its politicians, Republican and Democratic alike. 45,000 Americans die each year in connection with their inability to obtain health insurance. The foreclosure crisis continues. There's nowhere to make an honest family-supporting living for millions of workers, or maybe I should say ex-workers, because the corporate overlords have systematically shifted the lion's share of manufacturing jobs to lower wage peripheral zones of the world capitalist system over the last 4 decades. As destitution stalks the homeland, the leading financial firms that caused the meltdown have benefited from gargantuan federal bailouts, allowing them to resume multi-million-dollar bonuses, business as usual, for the very charlatans who crashed the game.
That ain't right.
The federal government offers little to ordinary working people, but has passed the largest Pentagon budget ever and is presiding over an irrational and vastly expensive 5-front terror war in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Somalia, and Yemen. Not to mention the paramilitaries we have working within Iran, Colombia, and elsewhere. The so-called defense budget, really an empire budget, is itself a gigantic subsidy the taxpayer transferred to the corporate sector, the high-tech corporate sector, to people. That fell right in that. It's like a Supreme Court. To entities like Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and so on and so forth. Those wonderful people, those masters of war, whose CEOs hide in their mansions while young people's blood flows out of their pockets and gets buried in the mud. This is capitalism doing what capitalism has done for half a millennium. concentrating wealth and power in ever fewer and richer hands, discarding people like rubbish, ruining lives, creating irrational financial crises, and making the working class majority pay for the fix. Waging vicious wars that mainly target poor and working people, and using government to serve and protect the rich. Obama's Homeland Economic Team, and if it was Hillary, and even if it was Edwards, I think it would be the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I think a lot of you are getting over-focused on it. I'm sort of part of, I took 2 books with the guy in the title. I'm happy. I'm biggest at the end of the day is capitalism, okay? Obama's Homeland Economic Team is quarterbacked by the arrogant neoliberal Larry Summers, a Goldman Sachs veteran who privileges finance capital's bottom line over job creation and manufacturing within the U.S. Chomsky sees this rightly, I think, as confirming Adam Smith's warning that, quote, the architects of policy protect their own interests no matter how grievous the effect on others, as Adam Smith said in a much misunderstood book, Wealth of Nations. And they are the architects of policy, Chomsky adds. Obama made sure to staff his economic team with advisors from Wall Street, from the financial sector, which was a curious personnel decision on his part for someone Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck can't keep calling a radical leftist. There has been truly stunning state capitalist and militaristic continuity in the shift from old brand Bush to rebrand Obama, from Wall Street W to Wall Street Barry, who epitomizes the old shop floor maxim that you can't dazzle them with brilliance and baffle them with bullshit. And none of it has anything to do with the actual policy preferences of the majority of U.S. citizens. The American people, the irrelevant, invisible majority of American people, the actual American people, are nowhere nearly as reactionary as my European emailers and my well-off liberal friends here in this town and places like Madison, Ann Arbor, Hyde Park in Chicago, Lakefront Rentals, I don't know. But no, most people are nowhere near, not even remotely, as right-wing and reactionary as they think and as the media insists incidentally. Popular U.S. policy attitudes have long, Chomsky keeps talking about this, and if you, I don't have time to give all the polling data, but ask me later in the Q&A and I'll give you some. And this goes back a long way. So, popular majority U.S. attitudes have long stood to the left of both of the two dominant U.S. political parties, contrary to the media's routine, religiously repeated description of the United States as, quote, a center-right nation. Just for example, 71% of Americans think that taxes on corporations are too low. 77% think there's too much power concentrated in the hands of a few big companies. 2/3 think that big government and big business work together against the people's interests. I could go on and on with this kind of data. When you actually look at public opinion in this country on social policy issues and on societal arrangements, people come across, they don't identify this way because a lot of times they don't even know it. They're basically, it's social democrats. And they're very progressive on the whole. I don't have time to give all the opinion data, but there's one set of numbers that I particularly need to mention because it's particularly politically relevant right now. It's about health care. 59% of Americans polled by the CBS and New York Times as recently as January 2009 picked and are for Canadian-style single-payer national health insurance. And there's nothing new about that. That's a stubborn, that's a straight-up number that goes back 30 years. Most Americans are just flat out thought the government ought to come in and provide people health care. Last September, in a CBS New York Times poll, last September, as Obama was getting up in front of Congress and ruling out pretty much even a public, without claiming he'd be for a public option, and everyone knew he wasn't going to do it. 65% of Americans responded affirmatively to the following question. Would you favor the government offering everyone a government-administered health insurance plan? Something like the Medicare coverage that people 65 and over get that would compete with private health insurance plans. In other words, would you support, not just for people who don't already have insurance to the job market or elsewhere, but for anyone who wants it, a Medicare